Never seen. Sir, how are you employed?
I'm employed by the Oakland County Sheriff's Office,
And how long have you been a member of the Oakland County Sheriff's Office?
over 25 years.
And what's your current role?
I'm the detective lieutenant assigned to the investigative forensic services division.
And tell me, sir, what does a detective lieutenant at the investigative services division do?
I oversee our special investigations unit, our fugitive apprehension team, computer crimes, and warrants review.
Okay. What are some of the previous assignments you've had?
I've been a lieutenant since 2016. Prior to this assignment, I was a road patrol lieutenant in Rochester Hills. Prior to that, I was a detective, a sergeant for 10 years, and I did 5 years as a detective sergeant in special investigations.
Okay. Now, would it be fair to refer to you as one of the officers in charge of the investigation in the case of People versus James and Jennifer Crumbley,
Yes,
and also the case of People versus Ethan Crumbley?
yes,
Now, I say one of the officers in charge because this is a very large investigation, is that right?
correct.
So you work as a part of a team?
Yes, sir.
Generally speaking, what does an officer in charge do?
Generally speaking, we direct the investigation.
Okay. Now, have you had the opportunity to review the narrative reports generated in this case?
Yes,
Have you been made aware of the 911 calls made in regards to the November 30, 2021 Oxford school shooting?
yes,
Now, first of all, I want to ask you, you, as officer in charge, you sat through the hearing today as well as February 8th, is that right?
correct.
And you were present when we admitted Exhibit 10, which would be text messages between Ethan Crumbley and Jennifer Crumbley. And specific, the last text message that said, "Ethan, don't do it." You were here for that?
Yes,
Okay. And do you recall the time on that text message?
122.
Okay, 1:22 in the afternoon. And what time did James Crumbley call 911? Please call.
1:34 p.m.
And tell us, sir, if you know approximately what time did the actual shooting begin?
12:51.
Do you know the time the shooting actually stopped?
12:58.
Now, at 1:22 p.m., had the shooter's name been made public?
No,
At 1:34 p.m., had the shooter's name been made public?
no.
How many 911 calls were made on November the 30th, 2021 regarding the Oxford High School shooting?
Over 100.
Out of those over 100 phone calls, how many of them identified their own son as the possible shooter?
But just one, James Crumbley.
James Crumbley. Now, sir, you were here when Sean Hopkins testified, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you heard testimony from Mr. Hopkins that James Crumbley asked Ethan Crumbley about his journal,
yes,
and you were here during the cross-examination of Mr. Hopkins when he was asked more questions by defense counsel about that journal.
yes,
Have you had the opportunity to read the journal?
I have.
Well, first, let me back up. Were you made aware that a journal was found with Ethan Crumbley's belongings on November the 30th, 2021?
Yes, I was.
And where was it found?
It was found in the bathroom that the video showed Ethan went in just prior to the incident.
Okay.
He entered with his backpack. He exited without his backpack. The backpack was found in the bathroom.
Were you able, when you read the journal, were you able to identify it as being written by Ethan Crumbley?
I was.
How so?
Well, his name was all over it in it. The way his handwriting was very similar. In fact, the way that he makes his D's are very unique. It's almost like a number 2. He references the bird head incident. He references his best friend that we know. Come to know who that is.
So it's not just from the handwriting and from the location, but also from the content as well?
Correct.
Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, could you describe what the actual journal looks like?
Yeah, it's a hardbound black journal with apartments.com imprinted on the front of it.
Okay. Now, was there writing throughout the entire journal?
The writing starts about 3/4 of the way into the journal, and then it fills up the rest of the book.
Now, from reviewing it, are you able to tell if the first written page on there, closest to the front, if that was the first entry in the journal or the last entry?
The last The last entry.
And how are you able to make that distinction?
Based on the date that was written in it of 11/29/21.
And if you were to, let's say, make a photocopy of just a written page of the journal, how many pages would it be?
21.
Out of those 21 pages, how many discuss the Oxford High School shooting or his plan to shoot up Oxford High School?
Every single page.
Every single page. Now, is this journal all in written format or drawings contained as well?
Both written and drawings.
Okay. Now, because this is a preliminary examination, I'm just going to ask you about a few pages here. Now, we talked about the first written page and how it said, well, first of all, it being 21 pages long, if I showed you a photocopy of it, would that refresh your recollection when we talk about it?
Yes, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, Coach Willis? And so just for identification purposes, what have I handed you?
This is a photocopy of the journal that we found, that Ethan's journal found in the bathroom.
Okay. So what we have here labeled as page 1, that's not an actual written page, correct? What is that?
No, that was the inside cover of the book. It's, just states at the top property of Ethan Crumbley.
Okay, so just so we're all clear, page number 2 is the actual first page written in the journal, closest to the front of the journal. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and you testify this appears to be the actual last entry of the journal?
It appears to be yes.
And is this where it has the date on there?
It does.
Okay, what else is on there?
It has at the very bottom, in big bold letters, the words "forgive me."
If you were to flip the page, what did you see there at home?
Toward the bottom half of the page, it says, "First off, I got my gun. It's a SP 2022 6-hour 9mm. Second, the shooting is tomorrow, comma, I have access to the gun and ammo."
Now, you said there's drawings in there as well?
Yes.
Okay. Now, again, I'm not going to go through every single page here. I'm going to direct you to what's been labeled as page 15. As far as drawings are concerned, what do you see here?
It appears to be drawings of two separate bullets. One's labeled a 22, the other one's labeled a 9mm. The 22 next to it has kill range 25 M max, and 9mm has kill range 100 M.
Okay. If you were to flip the page to page 16, is there a drawing on that page as well?
There is the bottom half of the page, a large drawing of what appears to be a cup with liquid in it, a severed bird head, and what I can only describe as a demon standing drawn next to it.
Okay. Now, is this a little drawing or is it a bigger drawing?
It takes up the bottom quarter of the page. It's a large drawing.
Now, what about on page 18? What do you see on that page with regards to drawings?
From the drawing, it appears it's a drawing of a head with where the eye is an X. The head appears to have a ponytail, and then a gun extended, a semi-automatic handgun extended out with a round being fired into the back of the person's head.
Okay. Is there any context to that drawing?
Just above it, it says the first victim has to be pretty girl with a future so she can suffer like me.
You said that drawing with the gun had depicted a semi-automatic handgun?
Correct.
And earlier you referenced the passages where he says, I have access to gun and ammo with SP 2022 6-hour.
Yes, sir.
What is SP 2000? Sorry, SP 2022. What is that?
That is the model number of the weapon used in the shooting.
And is that a semi-automatic handgun?
It is.
Now, if you flip through the journal, are some passages written with larger letters, bolded letters?
Yes.
Okay. If you were to flip the page to page 19, what do you see there?
In the middle of the page, in all caps, I will kill everyone I fucking see.
Is there any context made to that statement?
But just above it, it says, "I will cause the biggest school shooting in Michigan's history." And then he goes on to say, "I will kill everyone I fucking see. I have fully mentally lost it after years of fighting with my dark side. My parents won't listen to me about help or a therapist."
I'm going to refer you back to page 6 now. We talked about some bolded letters. And this isn't just a few pages, right? It's throughout the journal. Is that fair to say, the bolded letters?
Yes, sir.
Okay. On page 6, does anything jump out at you?
The word help in bold letters colored in.
Is there any context to that word?
Yeah. In that, right next to help, it says, "I have zero help for my mental problems, and it's causing me to shoot up the fucking school."
Yeah, one over here. I have nothing further.
Any questions on behalf of Jennifer Crumbley?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. You just testified about the journal, that was found in Ethan's backpack, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you testified it was approximately, how many pages?
21.
21
written pages.
Okay, and I'm holding up what I believe is a copy of it. Does this look close to what you have?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Now, throughout this journal, you testified that you can see it's Ethan Crumbley's writing in the journal, and you can tell it's his writing based on the way he shapes letters, correct?
Yes.
It's fair to say that the only person who you can identify having written in this journal is Ethan Crumbley.
Yes.
There are no messages written in the journal, like to Ethan from mom, anything like that.
No.
There's no messages in there like from James saying, "Ethan, I want you to do whatever after school." No messages like that, no writing from James or Jennifer Crumbley to Ethan.
No.
So as far as you can tell, this journal that has been called Ethan's journal was Ethan's possession. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you repeat
I
that,
got
please?
objected to speculation. He can testify to what the writing is consistent of. As far as possession, the court knows that's a legal concept. She can only testify to what he would do.
I think she needs to rephrase too also.
Okay. The journal that was found is believed to be Ethan Crumbley's journal, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And on the front, it actually says property of Ethan Crumbley, correct?
Written, yes.
Okay. And in the journal, in addition to writing about school shootings and other issues, there's also a continuous message of, "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Is that correct?
A continuous message?
Well, let's start with page 775. We see there that he writes, yeah,
I don't have 775.
the one that has "forgive me" at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so above the "forgive me" at the bottom and above the last passage that's written, it says, "I'm sorry for this, Mom and Dad. I'm not trying to hurt you by doing this. I have to do this." Do you see that?
I don't, miss, I'm sorry.
May I approach? And it starts right in here. It starts, and then it continues down
Oh,
here.
okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
so in that first part, we see there's a message there that says, "I'm sorry for this, Mom and Dad. I'm not trying to hurt you by doing this. I have to do this." Do you see that?
Yes.
And that's in Ethan's handwriting, correct?
Yes. It appears to
Okay.
be.
And then below that, there's a paragraph that's indented just a bit. And again, it says, I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry for never saying it back. And then I love you to pets. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And then going a couple pages into the journal, I guess let's go towards the back. The second to last page. There's a little, it would be page 21 on what the prosecutor gave me, page 794 of what I have. On the bottom left-hand corner, you can see where he writes, I hope my parents can forgive me for what I do. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And in this journal, it's fair to say that there is nothing that indicates Jennifer and James know what Ethan is going to do in terms of the school shooting.
I'm sorry.
There is no evidence in this journal that shows Ethan told his mom and dad what he planned to do in terms of that school shooting.
No, ma'am.
And if anything, his messages about his parents are more so ones of, I love you and please forgive me.
Yes,
what
in the
you've
journal,
seen.
yes,
From what you've seen.
yes.
On the last page of the journal, so it would be page 22 on what you have, and it's page 795 on what I have. I want to draw your attention to the left side of the page. There's writing written up the side. Do you see where it reads, I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot the school?
Yes.
Now, closer to the front of the journal, Ethan mentions that at another point in time, he has access to the gun and the ammo, correct?
Yes, I believe it's what, page 3?
On mine, it's page 776. On yours, it's page, yes, 3.
Okay,
Okay, so on that page, he writes, the shooting is tomorrow. I have access to the gun and the ammo, correct?
yes,
And it does not say in this how he has access to the gun or how he gained access to the gun, correct?
it does not say that.
It does not say how he has access to the ammo or how he gained access to the ammo.
You're correct.
And so from reading his journal, even knowing he had access to the gun, you cannot say that Jennifer or James Crumbley gave Ethan access to the gun.
By reading this journal, you're correct.
There is no way to draw conclusions about what Ethan did to gain that access, correct?
Section of the formal question, Judge. The conclusions are for this court.
Spence?
I believe the witness is already answering. I don't think it was confusing. I'm not sure.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The question is whether it was confusing to the witness, and he did respond. Go ahead.
Thank you. Now, this journal also, just so we can be clear, was found in Ethan's backpack, correct?
Yes,
And when I say backpack, I'm talking about the bag he used at school that he had the last day he attended Oxford High School, the day of the school shooting, correct?
yes,
And this journal was found in the backpack where the gun was also located.
no,
Well, the gun was located there at some point in time prior to the shooting. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean. The gun was-
I'm sorry. You know what? I'm asking a really bad question. Let me back up. The backpack had certain items that remained in it. The backpack was found in the bathroom by law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes,
And in the backpack, that belonged to Ethan, that is where his journal was found. Is that correct?
Yes,
When you found the journal in the backpack, you have no other knowledge of where that journal had been other than in Ethan's backpack, correct?
no, I'm sorry, miss, can you repeat that?
You don't, so for example, you can't say this journal was on the kitchen counter at home where someone would have seen it. This journal would have been here or there. All you know is that that journal, when you saw it, was in Ethan's backpack, correct?
Yes,
Your Honor, may I have just a moment?
Yes.
Okay. You were able to tell chronologically how the journal was written, correct?
You mean when it was written?
Yeah, like what, were you able to tell that Ethan wrote some passages and then wrote passages later in time?
it appears that way by the way the journal's written, yes.
Do you agree with me that the statement about I need to find where my dad hid the gun, that statement comes before Ethan saying he now has access to the gun?
Objective is actually from the question. I don't think there's
I'm
any.
gonna sustain. Go ahead and rephrase, please.
The last page of the journal talking about I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot the school. This writing was written prior to the writings at the top of the pile on the journal pages.
Is that a question, ma'am?
Yeah,
Okay.
does that sound correct to you?
Yes, I mean, I can't say for sure this is a margin writing, it doesn't seem to be, but I don't know.
You have no reason to disagree though, is that correct?
It's speculation. You can't answer anything.
Sustain.
I have nothing further.
Any questions on behalf of James Crumbley? None, Your Honor. Any redirect?
Just very briefly. So you said on the whole 21 pages here, every single page represents the school shooting?
It does.
Okay. And if you were to just look through quickly, we talked about there's some pages with bolded letters, of which this is 6. With the word help in there.
Yes,
And that's where he says, I have 0 help for my mental problems. And it's
Your Honor, I would just object that we're going beyond the scope of press at this point.
Sustain.
You were asked about the very last page, on page 22, and I just want to make sure I heard your testimony correctly. And the passage in there was, in mind, 9mm, is that correct?
that is correct. I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot this.
And if you were to look at page 3, that's closer to the front of the book, right?
Yes,
And that's where he writes, first off, I got my gun, it's a SP-2022 6-hour 9mm.
correct.
Okay. And then he writes, second, the shooting is tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the page just before this identifies the date as November 29th of 2021.
Yes, sir.
And that is actually the gun that he used for the school shooting on November 30th, 2021.
The 6-hour SP 2022, yes. I know it.
I missed it.
Your Honor, may I briefly recross?
Again, the scope, please, only.
Okay. The prosecution brought up the word my in terms of my gun. When you handle cases where a teenager is driving a car, there are times when it is owned by their parent, correct?
Yes,
The
Even if,
objection is irrelevant.
even if they call it my
Objection.
car.
Response to the objections.
The prosecution is trying to make my mean that it's absolute possession when it's very obvious that my gun is technically his parents' gun? It does not mean it's his gun that he has free access to. The prosecution has been tainting the whole hearing.
Well, all he would do is testify as to what was actually in the journal itself and the language that was in the journal.
Right.
So, and that's what he testified to.
And I'm just asking him that in circumstances when a writing says my something and a teenager has written it, sometimes they're referring to
You
property.
are asking him to speculate at that point, because you're asking him to get into the head of some other teenager and what they may or may not have done. So I'm sustaining the objection.
Thank you.
Okay, I have nothing further. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
You may step down. And call your next witness.
Prior to keep arrest.
Any defense witnesses?
No, Your Honor.